Hey, congratulations. Go ahead and wherever you're at, clap it up for yourself, give yourself a pat on the back because, y'all, we made it. This is the last live show of this college football program before they actually start playing college football games. It was a long time coming now. A lot of y'all linked arms with us. We walked through the trenches of the offseason, so to speak, from winter into spring, got a little nibble of spring football, and that was awesome enough to hold us over. But now, y'all, it's our time. Now college football season is about to get rolling, and we're so grateful to have y'all dialed in here. This is the Hard Count. This is the People's College Football Show. It is on every single day. We are live 3 times a week, though, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. If you're new to the show, you're just finding us for college football season, make sure you have subscribed, whether it be the podcast feed or the YouTube channel, because it's college football the way that you want college football talked about. Period, mic drop, the end. It is Thursday, August 22nd, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet, and a good, I don't know what we're at now, 48-ish hours away from Toe Meat and Leather in Ireland. Got a beautiful, beautiful show lined up for y'all. I took to my Twitter page, X, whatever you want to call it. I took to that social media platform at JD Pickell, and I asked y'all, what is the craziest headline, y'all, that we're about to get from week 1 of the college football season? And so I sort of spun that into what I'm going to call your week 1 predictions, because essentially if you're saying it's going to be a headline, to us that is calling it a prediction. And y'all brought the juice with these, man. We got takes on Colorado, North Dakota State. We got takes on A&M, Notre Dame. We got takes on Miami and Florida. Like, we got a lot of takes from y'all that we're going to get to here in a matter of moments. But if you've been tuned into the socials around the college football world, Nebraska, just yesterday, as soon as we got off the air, they said, Dylan Raiola, you're the guy, QB1. Here's the keys to the car. Don't crash, kid. What does that mean for Nebraska? What does it mean for Nebraska's potential, which is maybe the better word to use there when we talk about their new look offense or new look offense with a new quarterback? We'll unpack that together. And DJ Uiagalelei is another quarterback we're going to talk about during this show because he is I think he's one of the most polarizing players in college football, not because of his personality, but because of his story and because of what he was billed as a recruit and what he's going to do, I believe, at Florida State. And I think the conversation around him has become a little bit murky. Like, I think we're actually assessing DJU the incorrect way as it pertains to what he's going to be and what they're going to ask him to do at Florida State. So we'll talk about that together. And then at the end of the show, most important things ahead of our week 1 matchups, talking Georgia and Clemson today. All right, so bring your hard hat, bring your lunch pail, bring your helmet. I should have grabbed this before we got on the air. We have a sweet SMU helmet that the folks out there in Dallas grabbed for us, which was absolutely awesome. You want to grab it? Yeah, heck yeah. Nick Brake jumping on, grabbing the lid. Thank you, brother. How about that? Look at this. This is huge. Shouts to Billy Embody, who runs our SMU On 3 site as well. Look at this. From the folks out there in Highland Park just blessing us. I feel like I should just do the whole show with this on, but maybe not. We'll put it off to the side. But, hey, we got lids on the show. We got helmets being given to us, so we're very grateful for that. This wasn't like a replica either. This is like a real deal helmet. But this is the kind of juice we're bringing today. All right, hard hat, lunch pail. There's no mouthpiece here, but I would encourage you to wear one because we're about to jump into college football season. Greatest college football season of all time because it's the next one. All right? Hey, we love y'all. Let's get right to it, man. Let's get to your predictions, your headlines. I asked y'all on my Twitter page. I said, what is going to be the craziest headline we get from the results of week 1 of the college football season? Jordan Faison enthusiast came with the juice and said that Texas A&M fans are going to be leaving the stadium as we enter into the 4th quarter in Notre Dame A&M. How about that? Okay, so here's what I think we need to set the table and say. There's going to be a lot of overreactions if you're a Notre Dame fan that you're going to want to grab at. You're going to want to grab them, put them in your pocket, and take them back to South Bend. I understand the temptation. I think it's fair to even drink the Kool-Aid for a few hours after the game. But on that morning after, when you come to this YouTube channel and hear our reaction, hear our thoughts on the game, and as we all kind of start to get our bearings a little bit more on the rest of what happened during week 1, here's what I would say. The overreaction is going to be, well, I mean, if they're beating the brakes off A&M to where the loyal Texas A&M fans are filing out in the 4th quarter, I'm assuming that Riley Leonard had a day and a half. Okay, so the temptation is going to be, Is he winning the Heisman Trophy? Riley Leonard for Heisman. Fire up the hype train. Support your guy. Be excited for him. However, it's week 1. So be excited for him, but the hype train maybe just have a little trot to the hype train. Maybe we're not full speed down the tracks. The other temptation is going to be, well, all right, is Notre Dame a national championship team? Like, is that what we're going to be in 2024? I think that's always going to be your goal in South Bend. But again, let's kind of rein it in a little bit. Understand that the national championship is still a few months away. Let's take care of business against USC and Florida State and Louisville and all that alike. I do think, even with that being said, there's a couple of undeniables if this does end up being the case for Notre Dame. If you end up beating the brakes off of a top 25 Texas A&M team, I understand it's Mike Elko's first game in College Station. I understand what A&M is going to be long-term is not what they are in week 1. That's why we're trying to pump the brakes on the overreactions. But you cannot deny that if Notre Dame is sending Texas A&M fans out of the stadium in the fourth quarter, that means that the roster talent that Notre Dame has on that squad, they played up to that level. Because that's, I think, the thing we got to talk about with Notre Dame. I don't really have a whole lot of questions about the talent, y'all. I don't. And I don't think you do either when you look at the names on that roster. Riley Leonard, I said it yesterday, there's a reason why the NFL loves this dude. I mean, he has physical attributes coming out of his ears. I don't know what the NFL thinks about his ears, but I have to imagine that they like what else he brings to the table as well when it comes to his athleticism and throwing the football downfield, all those things. If they beat A&M, that means at the very least he was consistent enough in that football game to make the whole machine work together. Because Chris Mitchell, Jaden Greathouse, those are a couple names to know in that wide receiver room. Jeremiah Love is a stud scat back for them that can catch it. He can run it. Like, he's going to be a stud for them. That means all those ingredients came together in week 1. And again, week 1 is just one data point, but to be firing on all cylinders from your first game in what I believe will be the most difficult road atmosphere you have to play in all season if you're Notre Dame, that's a really great jumping off point for a new OC in Mike Denbrock in South Bend. It's a great place to start. So the undeniable is, okay, a lot of talent. It's working together. It's a great base to work from. Take that, be excited about that, build off of that. The other undeniable, and this is maybe the more important undeniable if you're an Irish fan, that might be the second toughest roster talent that Notre Dame has to play against all year. Like, you look at the rest of their schedule, you got Louisville, Florida State, and at USC. You got to go 1-2 in that stretch, I believe, to make the college football playoff. Go 2-1 to feel good about your chances. The margin for error for Notre Dame, the rest of their way, just, I believe, personally blows all the way up. And that would be huge for the folks in the South Bend. That'd be huge from a confidence perspective to have a win like that on the road in that atmosphere. For your transfer quarterback who just, let's call a spade here, didn't get all the reps he wanted to during the spring, that'd be huge. That'd be absolutely huge, if for no other reason from a jumping off point. Now, Bobber, he's got our next week 1 headline, and this is one that's gonna ruffle some feathers. This is not my prediction now. Folks in Boulder, before you get after us, this is not my prediction. So before you comment, hater, this, that, the other, not my prediction. But we're going to unpack it. Bobber says North Dakota State runs wild, and they beat Colorado in week 1. Now, let's be clear. North Dakota State is not your run-in-the-mill FCS team. North Dakota State right now has the second best odds to win the FCS National Championship. So that's a good football team. Colorado is favored by 9.5 points. To give you some perspective, Georgia is favored over Clemson, a team that has the second best odds to win the ACC, by right around 2 touchdowns. So the spread isn't telling you that Colorado is going to blow the doors off North Dakota State. That's Vegas' opinion. If Colorado were to lose this game, it would be a lot of things. It would be embarrassing. It would be discouraging. It would, I think, take the wind out of your sails quite a bit if you are a Colorado fan, because you look to the future and you're like, golly, we can't beat North Dakota State, and we got to go play the rest of the Big 12. Like, are you kidding me? It would mean a lot of things, I think, internally for you as a fan. But what does it actually mean when it comes to playing the next week? In my opinion, not a whole heck of a lot. And I'm not trying to minimize losing to an FCS team your first game of the season, because, y'all, there is no world where Colorado should lose this game. We're doing predictions next week. I'll tell you right now, I'm not predicting Colorado to lose to North Dakota State. That's not going to be even a game we break down, I don't believe, all that much. But at the exact same time, like, Auburn wasn't supposed to lose to New Mexico State. So you see where I'm coming from. But here's what I think we need to take away from this if this does happen. If Colorado does somehow lose North Dakota State the first game of the year. It does not mean that Colorado is a bad football team. Contrary to what social media will try to tell you after the game, doesn't mean that. It also doesn't mean that Colorado won't go on to make a bowl game, which again, I believe is success for them in 2024. Becomes a little more difficult because that was the ones you probably penciled in as a W for you if you're a Colorado fan as part of that 6-win plus effort to make a bowl game. Doesn't mean that can't still happen. It also does not mean that Coach Prime isn't cut out for college football. It doesn't mean that. Okay? I'm not telling you those things are all, not still on the table, but it doesn't mean that. Okay? How this would happen is Colorado, again, who should be superior from a talent perspective, will be superior at quarterback, will be superior on the perimeter. Like, there is not a situation where Colorado should lose this game. But if it happens, what does that mean? It means that Colorado, quite frankly, wasn't ready to play. It means internally Colorado did not do the things, whether it was during the week, whether it was leading up to the game, whether it was an emotional or an approach to the game itself. Like, Colorado did not bring their A game. That's how they would get beat here. And so if that happens, you say, okay, this is a team that's still trying to figure out how to win and how to consistently compete. Because this is the deal now. The great teams in college football, the ones that win conference titles, they do not care what the other logo is. It could be that Georgia logo. It could be North Dakota State. It could be Cornell. It does not matter who's on the other sideline. They focus on themselves. They don't focus on the external noise. They do their thing. And so if Colorado does go out there and cover that spread, and let's say they win by a couple touchdowns, okay, that's a step in the right direction. That's encouraging to me if I'm trying to piece together what Colorado's going to be in 2024, that, okay, this was a game they very easily could have overlooked. FCS team, it's the opener. We're still trying to get our sea legs out there, and they handle business. That would be encouraging to me. The matchup to watch, and this is kind of the matchup to always watch, quite frankly, if you're trying to figure out who's going to win a football game, but especially for Colorado, what they did last year stopping the run is not going to cut it this year. It's not. They know that in Boulder. Allowed 175 yards on the ground last year per game. Not good enough. North Dakota State happens to major in running the football. They average 230-plus yards a game. So for Colorado, I don't need you to hold them to like double-digit rushing yards. That'd be great, but I need to see some improvement. Because as much as this isn't going to be like a Big 12 outfit from North Dakota State, it's still going to be, I believe, a decent test for you in the trenches. Now, Colorado, I mentioned that number that they allowed last season on the ground. That's a big reason why they went to the portal. So it's going to be a very different front seven for them, just so we're all on the same page. But for Colorado, I'm not predicting them to lose, but if they do lose, there's going to be a lot of headlines, a lot of emotion. Stay calm, deep breath in, deep breath out. The next thing is the next thing. But again, I think Colorado wins that game. I'm just curious to see their approach and what that run defense looks like. That's going to be massive. All right, hey, appreciate everyone tuned in live. If you haven't yet, go ahead and do two things. Subscribe to the channel. First and foremost, most important. We need everybody a part of this thing as we jump into college football season. Second thing I need you to do, go ahead and like the video. Thank you so much in advance for that. The SEC released their tiebreaker rules yesterday, and we're not really going to jump into that right now, but I just wanted to at least reference it. You know, it's kind of what you would expect all the way down to we would draw a team at random or something like that as the final tiebreaker. We'll get there when we get there. Little bit disappointing. There is no mention of rock, paper, scissors. There is no mention of a relay race. There is no mention of an arm wrestling match. No thumb war. A little bit disappointing. So, missed opportunity there, but if you want to check out those rules, you can. Andy Staples, I think, actually did a whole segment on that this morning. It was really, really good. So go check that out on the On3 YouTube channel right now, I believe. All right, another week one prediction we have from one of y'all. The headline from Marsh, friend of the program, he says, national media, after the Florida-Miami game, will be saying that the U is back. Now, you know how we feel about this. If you have watched this show for the better part of the last year or so, a lot of people are very quick to say, well, Texas is back, Texas is not back. Same kind of vibe here, I think, with Miami. In my opinion is the folks that say, they're back. They're this, they're that, like they're like using the word back, I think is truly for like the thumbnail crowd. Like it plays well on social media, it plays well on a YouTube video, but like I don't know if back is actually something that ever really you can point to and say, yeah, they're this, they're that, they're back. I think short of winning a national championship, there's always going to be an argument back and forth around Miami being back or not back. Also, I would say for this game, even if Miami wins the game by 100 points, there's always going to be the counterpoint that, well, hey, Florida, they're supposed to win like 5 games this year. Are you really saying you're back after beating them? I know it's in the swamp. That's not what I would say. I'm just telling you that's the counterpoint people would have. So let's throw out the idea of them being back or not back. People will say it, people will not say it. But here's, I think, the thing to talk about with Miami. What I'm looking for in this game, if I'm trying to get a gauge for Miami's progress, what does this team play like? And that's kind of an obvious thing to say, but I want to make it a little bit more specific. When you watch Miami, do you see the markings of a team that looks like that old Miami, that looks like that old U more specifically? Like, do they dominate the line of scrimmage? Do they have real deal playmakers on the perimeter? Maybe more importantly, when it comes to watching the broadcast, or for those of y'all that are going to be at this game, what's the edge Miami plays with? Because that's kind of the thing with Miami, right? Like, a lot of teams have won at a high level over the course of college football history, but we talk about the U, and the word that we use with them is the swag that they have, the attitude that they have. Like, it's one thing to be good. It's another thing to walk out there, know you're good, play like you're good, and dominate. And quite frankly, I think that's why you brought Mario Cristobal back to Coral Gables, to bring that attitude, to bring that energy, to bring that passion, all things that I believe have marked not just what Miami has been previously, but what the U was. That's the difference now. I don't want to see Miami against Florida. I want to see the U against Florida. Also, I'll say this. We've talked a lot about Cam Ward and what he does throwing the football downfield. You got to have it in this game. But if we're going to even approach the idea of Miami looking how they used to look and being, in the neighborhood of being back, quote unquote, you look to him as the alpha. You look to him as the temperature setter. So it's one of those things now, if we're trying to assess Miami against Florida, I'm not so much looking at how much do they win by. I'm looking at how do they play. Like I said, what's that swagger like? Because I think those Miami teams, they're not going to beat themselves. The teams that go on and compete for conference titles and college football playoff berths, like I expect this Miami team to do, just so we're on the same page, it would be a lot about how do you handle yourself. Are you turning the football over in a raucous environment because it's kind of a big spotlight for you and you're not really sure how to handle yourself? Or is it, no, we know who we are. Doesn't matter if we're playing in the parking lot. Doesn't matter if we're playing in a sold-out swamp. Like, we know what we do. We bring that to the table, and we bring that every single Saturday. That's what I think Miami's aspiring to be. That's, again, why I think you brought Mario Cristobal to the U, because of the culture and the attitude and the swag that he has. And also now, going into year 3, let's be clear, this is the team, as a Miami fan, that you signed up for when he was hired. Like, the talent level, I believe, is night and day different. I think the numbers indicate that. If you look at the actual stats from Miami, the way they've improved in total defense and total offense from year 1 to year 2, and now I think they'll improve in year 3, that's a confident group. It's a very confident group. But how does that translate when you're backed up, it's 3rd and 7 on your own 15-yard line, and the swamp is just absolutely letting you have it, and you're Cam Ward. You're your first time being the quarterback at Miami now. How do you handle that? I'm excited to see it, man. But, again, back for me is something that I think it's a great point here by Marsh, but I think back is something we try and be careful to not lean too deeply into. But back to me, if we were to use that verbiage, would look a lot like the culture and play style and attitude from Miami and not just winning. So there's one more, or I guess 2 more predictions or headlines I want to get to here, and this revolves around the USC LSU game. So let's break these down one at a time. Fonzie says his headline for week 1 is going to be USC's defense is a royal flush. Now, when we posed this question on my Twitter page, got a lot of this kind of response. I got everything from USC shuts out LSU to the USC defense is night and day different to the USC defense goes off. All of these, takes. I've said it before. I think the USC defense will be much improved from what they were last season. Why? Because just quite frankly, structurally, you're already in a better position, I believe, with Danton Lynn. I think a new voice will bring new confidence. And I think the personnel in-house at USC, is better than what we got to see last year. It's hard to gauge talent when talent's out of position to begin with, if that makes sense. I don't think they'll be out of position. So if they have struggles defensively, maybe you point to Lincoln Riley and their philosophy. Maybe you point to what they have on the roster. That's a whole other discussion. But if this headline comes true, phenomenal. That's a great jumping off point. You should be encouraged. That's an SEC outfit from an LSU team that was really good offensively a year ago. Be encouraged by that. However, let's be slow to define the USC defense in week 1. Because we said this yesterday on our overreaction segment, like, we don't actually even know what LSU is going to be offensively. Like, we see the logo, and we see what that logo did last year, scoring like over 40 points a game and having a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. But the reality is that quarterback's not there. Those 2 first-round picks at receiver, they're also not there. So LSU this year, we don't know what they're going to be offensively. New quarterback, new play caller. Mike Denbrock gone to Notre Dame. It's Joe Sloan now calling the shots. Right around 50% production you're replacing from last year's best offense in America. So will LSU be really good offensively again? I happen to believe so. But USC doesn't get them in October where they're really running and gunning. They're a finished product. Like, USC gets them week 1. And if you're a Trojan fan, you're like, yeah, it's week 1 for us too. Fair point. But I would just caution you to say this is exactly who the USC defense is based on what LSU did. I don't think that's the proper way for us to approach this whole thing. Now, the other headline that kind of falls in line with this thought of, okay, well, USC goes out there in Vegas, they handle business, vibes are high in Los Angeles, but what's the flip side of that? Smash Hit Sports, I think he hit it on the head here, also a friend of the program. He said the headline is going to be, if this ends up being the case, that Brian Kelly will be questioned if he's the guy at LSU. His headline is, can Brian Kelly win at LSU after a loss to USC? Now, if we see this headline, and again, if this happens, I believe we will see this headline, people are going to be coming out of the woodwork that were buzzing this offseason around Brian Kelly being overrated and this and that. They're going to say, man, look, they can't beat that soft West Coast team. They can't beat a Lincoln Riley coach defense team. How are they going to go win in the SEC if you can't beat that? I understand the frustration. The bar is set extremely high in Baton Rouge. No pun intended. Deep breath. Deep breath. And when you're starting to spiral, like all the things I just mentioned would, I think, define a spiral. If you start to get into that mindset, what do we have to do? When you spiral, go back to what you know is true. Not what you think is true, not what you believe is true. Go back to the facts and go from there. Here's the facts. Brian Kelly, in 2 years at LSU, has won double-digit games both years. That's a fact. Brian Kelly has won 73% of his football games over his career. He's been coaching football a long time. He wins a lot. That's a fact. Brian Kelly, we're having this conversation around, well, if he loses to Lincoln Riley, is he the guy? Can he win? He beat Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa, Brian Kelly's first year on the job. If you want to give week 1 with a new quarterback and 50% production and a new play caller at a neutral site that much weight, I would be slow to take away Brian Kelly's win over Nick Saban. I'll take that back. They actually beat they beat Alabama in Baton Rouge, just so we're on the same page. I accidentally said Tuscaloosa there. They beat them in Baton Rouge, but just so we're aligned there, that's a fact. Beat Nick Saban, first year. That should matter. Also, just kind of the cherry on top, if you're upset with the current roster, the current way that LSU looks as a football team, Brian Kelly's working on his 3rd top 10 class in 3 years, and one of those has the best high school football player in America right now, which is Bryce Underwood. All right, so there's going to be a lot of people trying to tell you Brian Kelly's not this, he's not that, they lost to USC. Do not take the bait. Don't do it. It's going to be tempting. We're going to feel some type of way on Sunday if they lose this game. Don't take the bait. All right? A lot of good predictions from y'all that we appreciate y'all adding to the conversation. Again, follow me on the socials, Instagram and Twitter at JD Piquel. Those of y'all that have been following on Instagram now for about a year or so, you know when the season gets rolling, Friday, a little Q&A action. Right? So at JD Piquel on Instagram. We'll sit down Friday, call it right around noon-ish, kind of varies on the time. Sometime before the end of the day Friday, we sit down, answer your questions, talk some ball before we jump into the weekend. So Follow me there as well. So here's something kind of exciting, something we all kind of saw coming, but Dylan Raiola, named QB1 at Nebraska. You remember Dylan Raiola, last seen lighting up the spring game in Lincoln. Our eyes all work. I said this on our reaction video yesterday. Everybody pretty much assumed this was going to be the case at some point in time. When? Nobody really knew. But this was the assumption. We asked Matt Rule, even before seeing Dylan Raiola during spring practice in that spring game, hey, when do you want to name a starting quarterback? Is it something goes into the fall? Is it something you want to get done during spring football? When do you want to do that? And he was very matter of fact. He's like, I don't want to play games with people. When we know who our guy is, we're going to make sure that everyone else knows who our guy is. When we know, we know. Nebraska, as of yesterday, they know it's Dylan Raiola. So what does this actually mean? If I'm a Nebraska fan, I'm excited for a number of reasons. The first of which being, just quite frankly, I would be impatient if Dylan Raiola were on my roster and not starting. You don't have to wait. Okay, you get to see what he is from the jump. And the fact that you get to see him, I think, speaks to his readiness to play college football. Like, Matt Rule would not trot this dude out there if he didn't think he gave them the best chance to win football games. Okay, so if you start to question, is Dylan Raiola the guy? Is it too soon? Is it too early? I promise you, they think he's ready. That's why he was named the starter. They're going to let him go. Okay, so that's encouraging in itself that he's ready to play college football. The other part of this that's encouraging is if he wasn't playing, think about just the narrative every single week that would be hanging over the Nebraska broadcast every single game. It'd be, well, I don't know here. Maybe Dylan Raiola should get a chance here this next series. Nebraska just threw another interception. Nebraska's trailing by 10. Maybe Dylan Raiola should get a shot. Like, that would always be the black cloud hanging over this football team, especially if they had issues offensively. So the fact that that's not going to be a talking point, I think, is encouraging for Nebraska fans. Now, we know what Nebraska's offense is. We know like the floor of what it looks like. The reason why, because the quarterback position last year left a lot to be desired. That's not to point the finger at any one guy. There was a lot of different, individuals that tried their hand at that position. The team overall averaged a 52% completion percentage and an interception rate of 6%. Both of those among the worst in America. Nebraska, offensively, we do know they're going to run the football. They're going to try to control the line of scrimmage. They're going to try to stay on schedule, be ahead of the sticks, set themselves up for like 3rd down and 2, 3rd and 3. That's where they want to live, okay? We know that about them. So we look at what it was, and again, we know what it is. The exciting thing with Dylan Raiola is, man, what can it be with 15 running the show? And the immediate thought is like, well, hey, that splash play he had during the spring game, all we hear about is the arm talent. Whenever you get to see some of the practice footage, whether it be like routes on air or whatever, the ball just flies out of his hand and it looks pretty from the jump. And that's exciting for sure. Like, the ability to stretch the field is something I think they will ask him to do at some point in time. The thing that's more exciting to me if I'm a Nebraska fan is the routine plays he can make. Because I mentioned 52% completion percentage. Y'all, that's not winning football, obviously. By Nebraska missing a bowl game again last year. Talk about that completion percentage. Talk about their 3rd down conversion rate. 37%. Again, in the bottom third of all of college football. That's not good enough. That's not good enough to get it done. So why are they so bad on 3rd down? Why do they struggle so much? Well, some of that goes back to them not completing the passes. That's one part of it. I think the other part is them setting up winnable 3rd downs. And Dylan Raiola now, just, I believe, being, quite frankly, a more efficient option for them at quarterback, you're going to have much more winnable 3rd downs. You're going to have much more 3rd and short. That's encouraging for me if I'm a Nebraska fan. And I think that's the task for him from the jump. Again, we said it in our reaction video yesterday. It's not so much about, man, can Dylan Raiola spin it 60 yards and hit Jamal Banks in stride for a touchdown? Yes, he can. I think he will. I think that'll be exciting when it happens, and that'll make SportsCenter. But the plays that are actually going to make Nebraska a bowl team in 2024 is hitting the quick out on 3rd and 5, being able to move the sticks on 2nd and 7 and get them 3rd and 1, hitting that slant and not turning the football over. If he doesn't turn the football over and they stay on schedule, Nebraska's going to be more than good enough offensively. More than good enough. Will they score 40 a game? Let's take it one step at a time, but I do think Dylan Raiola just brings you a lot more efficiency, a lot more security, and I think a lot more consistency with how he throws the football. Now, at the exact same time, here's the discussion we have to have. Dylan Raiola is a true freshman. With true freshman quarterbacks, regardless of what level of college football you're playing, there is going to be some true freshman moments. Okay, I get he was there during spring practice. I get that he is just a physically gifted human being when it comes to throwing the football. Like, God gave him a lot of ability he didn't give a lot of other people, but at the exact same time, he's still figuring out college football. And so when he has that game that he throws, 2 picks, let's just say that happens. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for a freshman quarterback to have a freshman ugly kind of game. If and when that happens, understand now that that's one data point, but again, we say this a lot. What they are in week 1 is not what they're going to be when they play Ohio State week 7. Not what they're going to be when they play Iowa late in the year. Okay, so for Dylan Raiola, that's one sort of, word of caution to the Nebraska fan base. Let's be patient. Let's let him progress. He's not a finished product. You got at least 3 years of this dude. Understand this is a jumping off point, so give him some time. Now, to the folks calling the shots at Nebraska, this would be my hope for Dylan Raiola. My hope is that when you commit to Dylan Raiola as your starting quarterback, as you did yesterday, it is a till death do us part kind of situation. It is a for better or worse situation. Because the worst thing I believe you could do for Dylan Raiola his first year as the guy is to bruise his confidence and make him feel insecure about what he's going to be if he does get the job back at Nebraska. Let's say he goes out there, has that 2-interception game. I don't think you bench him. I think you let him go through it, let him play through it. Understand that physically, I think he still gives you the best chance to win until you have reason to believe otherwise. Let him play through it. You got to give him the confidence to know, like, hey, you are our guy. If something goes well, awesome. If something goes poorly, respond. A big thing with Matt Rule is like, hey, what's next? Like, if something good happens, what's next? Hey, turnover, what's next? That's kind of his approach. That's the same approach I'd like to see them have with Dylan Raiola. One more thing I'll say, Heinrich Haarberg probably has to have a role. In my opinion, he's too good of an athlete. He's too big of a body. He should some way, shape, or form be involved in this offense. Is that a package at quarterback? Is that him playing H-back? I don't know, but I think he has to have a role. But Dylan Raiola, starting quarterback at Nebraska, we all saw it coming. Happened yesterday. Vibes are high in Lincoln, and for good reason. You got your quarterback of the future, and his time is right now. So from one quarterback to another, let's check in on the game that's about to happen this Saturday in Ireland. DJU and Florida State about to get it on and popping against Georgia Tech. But I think as DJU begins his career in Tallahassee, the conversation around him, I believe, needs to be unpacked maybe a little bit more, because I think we're viewing this incorrectly. We'll talk about that right now. If you're watching live, we appreciate y'all being dialed in. Make sure you're subscribed right here. If you're a Florida State fan watching this video ahead of Saturday's game, or maybe after Saturday's game, doesn't matter, make sure you're subscribed right here. It's college football. It's nothing but college football. The way that you want it talked about, the way that we enjoy it, the way that you enjoy it. This is a college football sicko community. So would love to have you all a part of this. The best way to be a part of it, by hitting that subscribe button to the On3 YouTube channel. So thank you in advance for that. The conversation around DJU, DJ Uiagalelei, has shifted since his Clemson days. Because when he got to Clemson, what was the expectation? Hey, this dude's the next great one. And then we saw that little peek at what he could be against Notre Dame, where he lit it up and threw for I don't know how many 100 yards. In an exciting peek at the future. The expectation was he was supposed to be the next great Clemson quarterback. 5-star out of high school. He's following Trevor Lawrence. You're hearing buzz around him during practice. And I think Dabo said there were times during practice where DJ Uiagalelei made Trevor Lawrence look human. Not a knock on Trevor Lawrence. If anything, just feeds the hype train for DJU, and I'm all about it. However, didn't happen that way, right? Whether it be the offensive system, whether it be DJU at that point in time in his career, for whatever reason, it did not work out. And so now he goes to Florida State. And I think the overblown opinion is going to be, well, he's a 5-star, right? Got to live up to it. Got to be, hey, you were a 5-star out of high school. You got to be that 5-star at Florida State. You were supposed to be the next great guy at Clemson. Go be the next great guy at Florida State. I don't think that's the point of any of this. I don't think that's the point at all. Quite frankly, I don't think that's why DJU went to Florida State, to prove himself and his 5-star billing. That's not the point of any of this. Okay? I'm sure DJU would like to prove himself right and prove, his 5-star billing right, of course. But I think DJU and what he's going to be at Florida State is very different than what was asked of him at Clemson. Like at Clemson, it was a quarterback-driven offense in a lot of ways. Yes, they ran the football, but you look at Trevor Lawrence, look at Deshaun Watson before him, it was we go as the quarterback goes. That's not Florida State. That's not. It's going to be run the football, be efficient, keep us on schedule, make the right play. Don't give it away, for goodness sakes, and we're going to be in good shape. And so they're not going to ask DJU to throw for 4,000 yards, 3,000 yards. If he does, great. But again, that's not the point of why he's at Florida State. And so we talk about, well, there's so much pressure on DJU, right? It's his last year in college football. He's got to do this, he's got to do that. Time is now, DJ, all that. There's some merit to that, I suppose. I mean, you're the quarterback at one of the most recognizable brands in all of the sport. Of course, there's some pressure there. You were a high-profile recruit. Of course, there's some pressure there. His backstory from Clemson to Oregon State, there's some pressure there. Last year in college, he wants to give himself the very best chance to be drafted as high as possible in the NFL draft. Obviously, there's pressure there. But make no mistake about it. How we assess DJU in 2024, whether for better or for worse, is not going to be isolated on his shoulders. And that's one of the reasons, quite frankly, again, why I believe him going to Florida State was a great fit. Right? Because remember all the schools that were in the market for a quarterback, and we threw out Miami and you threw out Oregon. I think USC was a talking point. And I'm not telling you what was or wasn't options for DJU, but him landing at Florida State with a quarterback guru in Mike Norvell and what they're going to do offensively, I think that's on the money for where he is at in his career. Again, the assignment at Clemson was be the next Trevor Lawrence. Be the next great one. I mean, that's nearly impossible to live up to that standard. That is like unreachable expectations. Now at Florida State, again, go to the right place with the football, keep us on schedule, don't turn it over. Pretty straightforward. Here's how we're going to define DJU. Not by stats, not by the yards per game he throws for. You want to see those look better, obviously, but that's not going to be what defines him. We are going to define DJU by wins in 2024. We will define DJU by how much he is able to elevate and take this Florida State football team that is 83rd in all of America in returning production. Right? That's it. That is it. That is, I believe, a big part of DJU's focus in 2024. I believe that is the focus in Tallahassee for Mike Norvell. Like, DJU is a part of this machine. He is not the headlining front man for this deal. You're the quarterback, so you have a role to play, but that's just it. Play your role, we're all getting paid. Play your role, we're all winning football games. That's the thing with DJU. So this narrative that, there's too much pressure on him or he's got to have this year or that year, I think that's garbage. I truly do. I think that he's in tremendous shape to go out and accomplish everything he wants to accomplish. And the overwhelming opinion around DJU, if they win the ACC, anybody talking down on DJU? Heck, can you talk down on DJU if they win the ACC with him playing quarterback? I personally don't think so. Because the point you can come back with when they say, well, he didn't throw for as many yards as Cam Ward. He didn't throw for as many yards as this guy. He didn't. What'd they do? Win the ACC? He's the quarterback? Okay. Mic drop. So the narrative on DJU shifted since his Clemson days, but I think that the pressure lies in that brand and not so much on DJU having to be a 5-star. I think that's out there. So we've done this series over the course of really the last 2 or so weeks. What are the most important things in some of these week 1 matchups? We've done Texas A&M and Notre Dame yesterday. We did Florida and Miami. I want to say it was last week. Let's go out to Atlanta. Georgia and Clemson about to get it popping. Week 1, we'll have a prediction for you in this game on Tuesday of this next week, obviously game week, on the live show. So tune in then. But what are the most important things when it comes to who's going to win this game? I got 2 for each team. Let's start with Clemson. if they want to win this football game, obviously they'll have to score points. Pretty straightforward. More importantly, how they score those points, how they would do that, you got to get creative offensively. And this is not to be harsh, but this is just the reality. If they tried to go mano-a-mano with Georgia, hey, we like our guy better than your guy, you're going to lose, and you're going to get, I think, just bludgeoned. Like it's going to be a snoozer in the fourth quarter. Georgia's personnel right now is better than Clemson. That's not saying a whole lot. I think Georgia's got the best personnel in America right up there with Ohio State. That's a discussion. If you want to beat Georgia and score on Georgia, you got to let Garrett Riley cook. Jesse Simonton was on the show, I guess it was a week ago, and I think he put it perfectly. The Clemson offense, better part of the last year with Garrett Riley there, has been very much so putt-putt. He said, let's take the driver out. Let's open it up a little bit. Let's let Garrett Riley do what he did at TCU, which is manufacture explosives, get your defense misaligned, force them to be disciplined, and when that happens, when they do make their mistake, take the shot, scheme guys open. Now, it's worth noting Garrett Riley and what he did against Georgia in that national title game when he was at TCU is probably, something to look at there. But I think that with Clemson offensively, if they want to score points, they can't just go straight up with Georgia. It's not going to happen. So be creative offensively, pass the keys to Garrett Riley, let him do what you hired him to do. I don't pretend to know everything about what's going on internally at Clemson, but I can tell you last year's offense may have had Garrett Riley's name at the top of that thing. It is not the Garrett Riley show just yet offensively. Cade Klubnik has a massive role to play in that, but we'll see what happens when they actually play the game. So speaking of Cade Klubnik, if I'm Georgia, let's turn up the heat from the jump. And that could be calling a couple blitzes. That could be part of it. I think it starts with what can you bring to the table from that front seven with the defensive line getting a push. Because if you turn up the heat early on Cade Klubnik, what that does to any quarterback, quite frankly, you start to see ghosts. Shout out Sam Darnold. You start to feel a little bit tentative, a little bit unsure of yourself. You think you see something coming. You maybe get out of the pocket when you don't need to. If that happens, it's going to be a long day for Clemson. If it doesn't happen, if you allow Cade Klubnik to sit back there and just play darts, make no mistake about it, just because we haven't seen him have an All-American season just yet doesn't mean Cade Klubnik can't make you pay. Also, if you don't get home and don't force him to scramble a little bit, allow him to sit back there, Cade Klubnik's a good athlete. It's only a matter of time, I believe, before maybe a running lane or two would open up because of how that picture looks in the secondary and receivers clearing out. Could make for some more real estate. So turn up the heat on Cade Klubnik. We say this a lot. Football is a simple game made complex by stupid people. There's no stupid people involved in this football game, especially when you're playing at the level that Georgia and Clemson are playing at. Get after Cade Klubnik. That's massive. Mykel Williams, I think, is the name to watch for Georgia. He's there, in my opinion, you could make an argument for their best defensive lineman. There's a reason the NFL loves him. Would love to see him get active in the pass rush early on in this game. Now, for Clemson, the trenches have got to hold up. Have to hold up. Like Peter Woods, this is your time, baby. This is your time. The Georgia offensive line is going to be ferocious, but you have got to find a way to win some of these short yardage battles with Georgia. When it's 3rd and 1, you don't have to win every single time, but win enough to where you force Georgia, in a perfect world, to punt, maybe in some situations settle for 3. The bottom line here is don't let Georgia wear you down. That cannot be the headline of this game is Georgia runs for 250 on the ground, and 150 of those came in the second half. 175 of those came in the second half. That can't be the case. It's not all on Peter Woods, but with him, in my opinion, being the best defensive lineman that they have, I'm very curious to see how he answers the call to action against this elite Georgia offensive line. Because if they start running the football, I think they'd be content just to pound the rock. But also, we say this, the play-action game opens up a bit. Not a world you want to live in if you're Clemson. And obviously, it would be advantage Georgia every single day of the week. Last thing I want to talk about here with this game, if I'm Georgia, I need Carson Beck to look like the best quarterback in America from the jump. Because if Clemson has a burnt hand situation, we've talked about that a few times on this show throughout our show's history. The burnt hand situation is you get a little bit aggressive early on, right? You try to be the hammer, not the nail. Take a gamble. More power to you. You blitz with a Barrett Carter. You blitz from the secondary, whatever it ends up looking like, however you want to dial it up. I think Clemson will be aggressive early, and if Carson Beck can make them pay, that changes the rest of the football game. At the very least, you're second-guessing yourself when you call that blitz because 15 made you pay. At best, maybe you just play a lot more honest in that box the rest of the football game, which an honest box, again, as good as Clemson's front seven is, I think that would still favor Georgia when it comes to the outcome of this game. So for Carson Beck, when Clemson dials it up, and again, I think they will be aggressive. It's a massive spot. Clemson's a 2-touchdown dog, more or less. They're going to come at you. Can you have the poise to sit in there, maybe take a shot or two, but throw that strike downfield to a Dom Lovett, to an Oscar Delp, to a Colby Young, whoever it ends up being, stand in there, take the hit. That'll change the rest of the game. That's what big-time quarterbacks do in games like this. High-profile matchup, a lot of pressure, neutral site, all those things. Clemson's coming after you. Stand in there, deliver a strike, change the rest of the game. I know it sounds like I'm overblowing the beginning of this game when it comes to Georgia and Carson Beck, but I'm just saying, like, that is going to be a massive tone setter. Because if Clemson gets home and Carson Beck gets confused, same thing we said about Cade Klubnik could be true about Carson Beck in this situation. Maybe that leads to a leak offensively that ultimately ends up being a problem for them the rest of the game is Carson Beck second-guessing himself. I don't think that will happen, full transparency. We'll give you our pick next week, but Carson Beck being the best quarterback in America from the jump when it comes to diagnosing and playing against that blitz is going to be crucial. So Georgia and Clemson, we'll give you our pick again next Tuesday on the live show, but let me know what you believe is going to be the final score in that game in the comment section below. So we appreciate you for that. And appreciate y'all being tuned in. This is a beautiful thing. When we get off the air here in a matter of moments, college football will be played before our next live show. How awesome is that? How awesome is that? I said it yesterday, but I want to say it again. For those of y'all that from the end of last season when we did our final live show of, I guess, the college football season in 2023 at that hotel lobby in Houston, for those of y'all that watched that show all the way through to now, thank you. Thank you, because it took all of us to get through this thing. We love and enjoy the transfer portal and spring football, and we love talking, other things during this part of the year where college football games aren't being played, but let's be real now. It took all of us. It was a bit of a grind. We kind of had to walk through the trenches, get through the mud a little bit to get to this point. And now we're here. We're on the doorstep of one of the greatest college football seasons of all time. We got Florida State and Georgia Tech about to kick it off in, again, a matter of hours. Thank you so much for making this show what it is. We're going to have an incredible college football season. Again, subscribe here if you haven't yet. College Football Sickos, this is your place. We're fired up for a great season. For Nick Brake producing the show, for myself, JD Piquel, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling now, and we will see y'all next time.